So Tony, our chat earlier about healthy food made me think about maybe trying to really kill it and knock it out of the park for dinner tonight. So here's what I'm thinking. For an appetizer, I could make crab cakes, crab cakes, and some bread for the table. Main course, could make some salmon and wild rice. Stick with me here, there's a point. And for dessert, some chocolate with a little coffee.
This is advanced.
Yes, I know. Well, I'm inspired. But here's the catch. I could make all of this tonight, but this meal might not be possible in a few decades. That's right. And that is something former White House chef Sam Kass explores in his new TED Talk. It's inspired by his Last Supper dinner parties, featuring menus with ingredients experts say are threatened by climate change. Here's a taste.
The point of this menu is not to depress you. It's not to make you feel bad. It's to really talk about what's at stake when we say the words climate change. What do the words climate change actually mean? What does 2 degrees warming actually mean? I'm from Chicago. 2 degrees warming, that sounds good. I'm like, let's warm it up a little bit. Maybe, what about 5? And I think we've really failed to connect what's truly at stake when we talk about the issues that we've been discussing today. So let's get into it.
Sam Kass is here to help us make that connection. Good morning.
Good morning. Great to be here.
It's so good to have you here. You talk about all sorts of foods in your TED Talk. I mean, peaches from Georgia could be gone.
Yep.
Peaches are synonymous with Georgia. It's just unbelievable. But you say that food is also something that can save us because of its huge impact on climate change. How?
Yeah. Well, I think you're seeing food play out in a few different ways of climate. One, it's on the front lines, right? It's being decimated by climate already. It's really on the front lines of the impact that we're seeing. But it also holds a lot of the solutions that we need. I mean, on our plates are impacting forests around the world. So food and ag is the #1 driver of deforestation globally, #1 use of the world's fresh water, #1 driver of biodiversity loss. All the life on planet Earth that sustains us comes down to the food that we eat. And so those decisions that we're making can have a huge impact on our ability to solve these problems in the future.
But you talk about losing certain dishes to climate change, but isn't part of the solution you sometimes hear to climate change giving up or reducing other dishes? Like you always hear, don't eat red meat, or so how do you make that trade-off?
I think the future must be delicious if we're going to get everybody to come with us, right?
Yeah.
And I love a good steak, like the next guy. I'm from Chicago, but we do have to eat less red meat for sure. It is definitely the biggest driver of emissions from the food system.
Yeah.
It uses a ton of water. There's a lot of land. Every time you see a forest cut down in the Amazon, it's really to either grow soybeans to feed those animals or to graze them. So that is definitely one thing that we can do is to reduce our overall meat consumption. But it doesn't mean you can't have it at all, and it doesn't mean that what we replace it with shouldn't be absolutely delicious.
So what do you do in your personal life? What foods do you limit, and how much do you limit them, and what other changes have you made because of this outlook you have on food and climate change?
Yeah, so for me, I'm definitely reducing my overall meat consumption for sure.
Meatless Mondays, or you only have meat once a month?
I'm not trying to be super prescriptive about it, in that regard. I just generally, on a given week, we're not having a big steak. But I think the other thing that I'm looking to do is support brands that are making claims around more sustainably sourced ingredients. Now, sometimes it's very difficult to tell who's telling the truth or who's just using it as marketing. But for me, anybody who's willing to start even saying it is a step in the right direction. And then we have to hold these companies accountable to make sure they're doing what they say they are. So that's definitely one thing that we can do to start shifting the whole industry to say, if you care about how you're producing these ingredients in a more sustainable way, we're going to support you as consumers. That has not really happened at scale. That must happen for sure.
I used to be on the climate beat at another network. I've covered it for years, and some people don't like talking about it.
I know.
Right? Everyday people they don't bring it up in their personal lives. You ask someone, when was the last time you talked about climate change at home? They never have.
Yep.
Going through the door of food is a new way at it. And I'm just curious, how have people reacted when you tell them about what you're working on, what you're thinking about?
Yeah, that was really the reason that I started doing these dinners in the first place, because I realized that the words mean kind of nothing to us. 2 degrees warming, as a Chicagoan, it sounds good.
That sounds excellent.
It sounds great. We got to warm it up. And we don't really understand what these words actually mean, and we've failed entirely to have an emotional connection to what's actually at stake.
That's key.
And food is who we are as human beings. It's our identities, it's our culture. And so I think when you start to look around about what's happening to all these foods that we love, it's coffee and wine and chocolate, all these things that we love every day. that to understand that our way of life, like what makes our lives delicious, might not be able to pass down to our kids and grandkids. That's, I think, where we start to see that we all have a stake in these issues in a way that we just haven't before.
And really quickly, Sam, I see these bracelets. Are you a Swiftie? What's happening here?
I got a very expensive jeweler. His name is Rafa. He's my 5-year-old. I got a necklace on underneath.
I can see that.
And but he's why I'm doing this work. He's why we have to fight this fight, because our kids' very livelihoods are really at stake. So yeah, I take him everywhere I go.
Oh, I love
That's
that.
cool. I love
Sam,
that.
thank you so much.